Good morning, this is Dr. Turner for Integrated Math 3. Today we're focusing on Unit 2.2, which is graphing quadratic functions. The rest of Unit 2 is going to look at graphing different types of functions, identifying n values, zeros, how to shift any of these functions, etc. 2.2 is mostly review, or should be. If you took Integrated Math 2 with me, you've taken this over and in a lot of detail. So we're going to go quick here. If you feel like you need a little bit of review, you're welcome to go back to the Math 2 videos and look at those. But for us, let's very briefly look at, well, what does a quadratic function look like? There are three forms you want to be familiar with quadratic functions. There's standard form, vertex form, and factored form. Okay? Each of these, if you're talking about graphing or identifying the key features of the parabola, there are different pieces of information that are easier to get from each of these forms. Depending on what your assignment is, you might need some of it, you might need all of it. But if you remember, standard form is written out as ax squared plus bx plus c. So going from the highest degree, the quadratic term, down to the linear, and then finally the constant term. The nice thing about standard form is that it's the easiest way to find the y-intercept, because if I plug in a 0, it's going to cancel out those first two terms, leaving me with whatever the constant is as the y-intercept. Even if it's in quadratic form, you can convert it to one of these two different forms, which again in Math 2 we spent a lot of time on. You can still find your vertex using the formula x equals negative b over 2a, so using those coefficients respectively. That'll tell you the axis of symmetry, and then if you want to find the vertex, you'll take that x value, plug it in to find the y. Sometimes the quadratic is written in vertex form, so it'll look something like this. If that is the case, your vertex is simply h comma k. Remember that vertex form, the formula is x minus h, so you're basically taking whatever the opposite sign is there for h to find your vertex point. You can still find the y-intercept by plugging in 0 and just seeing what you have for k. Or you could expand it, write it out in standard form. And then lastly, factored form, if it's written in factored form, that's the easiest way to find the roots. So whatever values you have here inside the parentheses, that's going to be your second root. Those are basically like zeros. Those are your roots, so those are your zeros. And that's, again, another way to look at the quadratic equation. Okay, guys, so again, you can be given that quadratic in any of these three forms, depending on what the question is asking you to do. For your assignment for 2.2, there are a couple things I'm asking you to do. One is to be able to graph a quadratic function. The other is to be able to identify the key features. So some questions will ask you for one, some will ask you for the other, some will ask you for both. So just as an example, this is kind of what this looks like here. Let's say I give you a function. We'll do f of x f of x equals x squared plus 10x plus 9. And so you'll have directions, something along the lines of either identify the vertex, or identify the y-intercept, or identify the zeros. Or it can be asked for all of them. So if you're asked to find all these information, because this is in standard form, from the previous slide here, we know that the axis of symmetry is going to be x equals negative b over 2a. So carefully plugging in those values, negative b, so negative 10 over 2 times 1 gives me a value of negative 5. Okay, so that's our axis of symmetry. And very briefly, if I'm looking at a parabola, your axis of symmetry is going down the middle, right? It's dividing the parabola into two symmetrical parts. And then whatever is at the bottom, that is going to be your vertex. Vertex will always be on your axis of symmetry. So we know that x equals negative 5. So that's where and this is not a picture of this graph, but I know that's where the axis of symmetry would be. I need to identify the vertex. So the vertex is on the axis of symmetry. So I know it's going to be -5 comma something. So then what I would do is then plug in the -5. So plug it in for both x values, -5 squared plus 10 times -5 plus 9. Being careful with signs, I get 25 plus -50 plus 9, which is -16. So my vertex, therefore, is at -5 comma -16. Because this is in standard form, y-intercepts is easiest here. Plug in zeros, those terms are going to cancel out. So my y-intercept is going to be at 0 comma 9. And then I have my zeros. With Math 2, we spent a lot of time on different ways to solve a quadratic equation, which is basically solving or finding the zeros. So you can do factoring, you can do completing the square, whatever method you prefer. I'm going to just factor it. So use the box or the magic X. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to get 9, but add up to 10. Those happen to be 9 and 1. So in factored form, this would be x plus 1 times x plus 9, which means my zeros are at -9 comma 0 and -1 comma 0. So all of these are key features of the graph, where the axis of symmetry is, the vertex, the y-intercept, and then the x-intercepts or the zeros. Most of the questions in the first part of the section are just asking you for that information. So no matter what form it's in, you can identify each of those by doing what we just did. You may also be asked to graph. Now, because we're doing this in person, or we're not doing this in person currently, rather, it's a little bit harder to see that you're doing it on paper. For your assignment, it tells you to use Desmos. This is review, but you want to be able to identify what those key features are. So if I am using Desmos still, I want to be able to type in the function and then still see where these key features are, right? So I have my vertex and I have my zeros. And you can click on these for your assignment just to highlight that you have the points there, your x-intercepts, and turn the points on, your vertex, your y-intercept, and then if you want, you can also type in your axis of symmetry. Okay? So if you are submitting this for an assignment, make sure that those key features are there. I'd also like to see the work showing that you can identify it without obviously typing it in the graph. That's kind of half your assignment. The other half is being able to identify the equation of a graph looking at a parabola. And so again, just type an example here. Let's say it was x squared plus 6x plus 9. Now, you wouldn't have that in theory. All you would have is this. Right? So what you would need to do then is first identify what the vertex is. Using the vertex, you could write the equation in vertex form, and the directions will specify, write this in vertex form or write this in standard form. If for some reason it didn't, then it's up to you to write whichever form you'd like. So if I have this and I am asked to write the equation of the graph, well, then I'm going to look where my vertex is. I'm going to have f of x equals a times x minus h quantity squared plus k. My vertex is h and k, so then I would plug in a -3 for h, and I'd plug in 0 for k. Now we don't need to have the plus 0 there, so I could just write a times x plus 3 quantity squared. For easier problems, your a by default is 1, but it doesn't mean that it will always be 1. So what I would need to do then, now that I have this, to solve for a, I would need to pick another point and solve for it. So make sure that that a is 1. So let's say I choose my y-intercept here at 0, 9. I would plug in 9 for f of x, and I would plug in 0 for x. 0 plus 3 squared is 9, and 9 divided by 9 is 1. So we're again verifying that that a value is 1. Putting it all together, my equation in vertex form is f of x equals x plus 3 quantity squared. No need to write the 1, no need to write the plus 0. Again, it's a lot of information, I understand that, but it should be a review. Math 2 focuses very heavily on quadratics for almost an entire semester, but if you guys need help, either watch the videos or attend class during office hours. Other than that, have a good day, and I will talk to you soon.